So most of the LoRa devices are using this chip here. And we have a thing called a link budget. And as we can see here, it has a sensitivity of minus 148. It's not important, just numbers. And then it has an amplifier power of plus 20 dBm. Again, just numbers, not really important. So when we look at this bit here, we can see we have a maximum link budget of 168. Just numbers, not important again. Well, if we go back to our, so if we look at our different nodes, so our link budget is 168. So bear in mind, these numbers are negative. Sometimes they're positive. You could have a positive signal to noise ratio. Anyway, so we have 3 kilometers, we have 6 kilometers and 3 kilometers. So this is quite interesting. The distances, those two are the same. And then this one here doesn't have it. That has like quite a big antenna on. It's an omnidirectional antenna, but it's quite a large one. So that's quite a good test. We can see the RSSI and the signal to noise ratio. Check out the signal to noise ratio on that though. That's to do with the fact it's the Lilygo. That Lilygo is so much better than the heltec. So to be traveling 6 kilometers with a signal to noise ratio just below the noise floor, that's really, really good. And these two are very similar. And this is coming off of my DIY ground plane here, which is on the roof. So yeah, that's looking really quite good. It's all still quite glitchy, like, you know, Meshtastic in general is very buggy. So don't get into this thinking, oh, it works perfectly, it's the new messaging app, I don't have to use the internet, and you know, I can use encryption and people aren't watching me. That it does sort of work, but there's a lot of development still going on and it is very buggy. So don't get into this if you don't like buggy software, or don't like flashing your firmware all the time, or don't like changing settings and tweaking. It's probably not for you. And it is very much about line of sight, your FRESNEL zone, and trying to get your data from point A to point B. It is line of sight, but it's not a dot, it's a circle. And that's to do with your FRESNEL lens. So you have to have enough line of sight for the circle to get to the other side. I thought I could do some drawing. So if you imagine you got 2 points, you got point A and point B, and you got your antennas, and you want to go from point A to point B. Well, if nothing is in the way, that's fine. But I thought it was line of sight, as in line of sight. It's not, it's a zone. So there's this thing called a FRESNEL zone, which is actually more like that. So what you actually need, depending on your distance, if you want to go 10 kilometers, you need a line of sight circle of 25 meters. I thought it was just line of sight. It isn't. So this zone, this picture is quite bad, isn't it? So this FRESNEL zone at 10 kilometers is 25 meters. So you need a line of sight of 25 meters. The other issue is when you start to go to 10 kilometers, you got the problem with the earth getting in the way. So what you might have to do is you might have to go up with your node to make sure you've got line of sight. Or the other node might have to come up so you have line of sight. But it's line of sight, but a FRESNEL zone. And can you see what starts to happen? It starts to interact with the earth. We actually start hitting the ground, which affects our radio signal. Now we can lose a bit of our radio signal. We can lose up to 40% of our radio signal and it'll still be fine. But these are things to think about. It's not a direct line of sight. It's more like a Zeppelin shape, or like a long sausage balloon. So our link budget, we got 168, it's just numbers, not important. we're well within our link budget, but what you'll start to find is you'll get resends, so you'll start to get a less reliable connection. So yes, it can connect, and yes, it can ping, and it is in the noise floor, and it's miles away, but you want a reliable connection, and this is where you'll start to lose bandwidth as well. If it sends a signal and doesn't quite get a reply, it's going to send the signal again. It's going to do lots of resends. Well, your resends use up some of your bandwidth. So yes, you can ping it, but not reliably, and that's what this is all about. You have to have the distance, you have to have line of sight, you have to have a big enough line of sight for your FRESNEL zone, and then you need good enough link budget to have a reliable connection, and that's what this is all about. So we've got a minus 168, we're not quite there yet, but I know that that's starting to get a little bit unreliable. So that's sort of the limit really of LoRa where I am. So yeah, when they talk about line of sight, they really do mean line of sight. And I'm all new to this radio stuff really. I come from the drone side of things. So I've done lots of different things in my life, but I'm coming from the drone side. And what's interesting is we're using high frequencies, we're low to the ground, or relatively low to the ground. There's things like trees that have got water in them, and trees are connected via their roots into the ground, so they earth everything out. So I'm used to trying to fly my drone through, say, the woods or something, and a video signal breaking up. So I'm used to visually seeing what video breakup is like. So it's interesting that realistically, you need a reliable connection to the other end.